Hey guys, Scott Layton here, my pet life. Today I'm at the beautiful archaeological site at Butrint, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. There is Roman, Ottoman, and Venetian ruins here, and we're going to walk around. I'm going to go into a voiceover and explain what we're looking at to give you a glimpse of another beautiful site here in Albania. We are about 40 kilometers away from my temporary home in Saranda. So let's go through and see the beauty. So here I am, guys, at the first major site here at Butrint Archaeological Park.
We've come in off the road through the trees, and already something's strange about this place. You don't see ruins first, you see forest, eucalyptus, tree canopies, and you hear the bird songs in the distance. The path from the entrance looks more like a nature preserve than an archaeological site. That's the first secret of Butrint. It's both. The ruins hide. For most of its history, this entire place was lost, swallowed by marsh, erased from the map. And the quiet you're feeling right now is the quiet of something that was forgotten for 500 years. But we are walking into a city, one of the oldest in Europe. And down here, where I'm standing now, these ruined walls scattered through the green, these low foundations the forest has been trying to reclaim, this is the edge of it. People have been on this ground almost beyond reckoning. The earliest traces of human life here go back tens of thousands of years. This little hill above the water has been drawing people since the Stone Age. But the city, the one we can still read in these stones, begins with the Greeks, somewhere around the 7th century before Christ. Colonists, the story goes, from across the water. And the people who made it their own were the Chaonians, the great tribe of this corner of Epirus, who turned Butrint into their administrative heart. Though the city itself preferred a grander legend, that it was founded by exiles fleeing the fall of Troy. Either way, a town grew up on this peninsula between the lake and the channel, and it grew up around one thing, a god. Not Zeus or Apollo, though they're here too. The patron of this city was Asclepius, the god of healing. And that single fact explains almost everything you're about to see, because people didn't only come to Butrint to live or to trade, they came here to be cured. The waters of this place were considered sacred, and the sick traveled from across the ancient world, left their offerings, and prayed at his sanctuary for their bodies to be made whole. That pilgrim money built the city. The healing god was Butrint's economy, its fame, its reason to exist. And his sanctuary, when we reach it, sits on terraces stepping up the hillside, the holiest ground in the whole of this place. But look at where the city sits, because the gods weren't the only reason it mattered. A small peninsula, ringed by a lake on one side and the Vivari Channel on the other, looking straight out across the strait toward Corfu. Whoever held this hill controlled the water, the trade, the crossings, the approach. So everyone wanted it, and one by one, they all came. The Greeks built here first, then Rome made it a colony, Julius Caesar himself, and after him Augustus, and gave it the forum, expanding the original Agora, the baths, the aqueduct, the great public buildings, a true Roman city with its own suburbs. Then Byzantium made it a bishopric, a stronghold of the early Christian world, and raised the Basilica and the baptistry, whose mosaic floor still survives in the ground here. We'll be walking to that soon. Then the Venetians, with their towers and their fortress across the water. Normans, Ottomans, each one leaving a layer, a wall, a name. Butrint is not one city. It's a stack of them, each built on the bones of the last. Walk it slowly enough and you walk straight through the history of the Western world. The building that holds it all together. A theater cut into the slope of the hill in the 3rd century before Christ, when the city was at its height. The Greeks carved the first seats into the hillside. The Romans came later and made it grander, widened it, built boxes above the entrances for the people who mattered. It sat right below the sanctuary, fed by the same pilgrims, the same faith. Thousands packed those stone benches. It's still down there, still half-shaded, still waiting. Because first the story has to end, and it ended not with a sack or a siege, but with water. The land around the city slowly turned to marsh. The channel shifted, malaria moved into the wetlands, and one by one the people left. By the late Middle Ages, a city that had stood for 2,000 years was simply abandoned, given back to the reeds and the silt. That abandonment is the reason any of this is still here. No medieval town was built on top of it. No modern city paved it over. The marsh that killed Butrint also sealed it, preserved it, until archaeologists began uncovering it in the 20th century. And what they pulled out of the ground was a near-complete record of Mediterranean history. Every great civilization of the Western world stacked in a single place. The world noticed. In 1992, UNESCO named Butrint a World Heritage Site, the first in all of Albania. Then, in the chaos of the 1990s, looting and neglect grew so severe that UNESCO placed it on the list of World Heritage in danger, and it took years of work to pull it back until the site was finally declared safe again in 2005. In the year 2000, it became a national park, protecting not just the stones, but the lake, the wetlands, the whole living landscape we're walking through right now. It's one of those rare places UNESCO calls a microcosm of an entire civilization. Greece, Rome, Byzantium, Venice, the full arc of the West, readable in an afternoon in the order it happened, with the water still lapping at the edges the way it did 3,000 years ago. This is it, the heart of the lower city, the thing everyone walks all this way to stand in front of. But just don't watch it. Imagine you're here, 3,000 years ago, a resident of Butrint. You've started your day at the Agora next door, meeting with neighbors. You've visited the temple of Aeschylus, much of its ruins to the right of us, asked for a blessing, and you're here now, sitting at the theater for a performance. What is your anticipation and expectation? Sit with it for a second. Stone seats curving up the slope of the hill in a long, patient arc, facing the open ground of the old stage. 3,000 spectators could fill these benches. And the strangest part is how intimate it still feels. You could speak from down there, not even raise your voice, and be heard all the way at the top. The Greeks understood sound in a way we're still catching up to, because that's who built this. And the first thing to understand is that this theater was never a building on its own. It was part of something larger. You're standing inside the sanctuary of Asclepius, the healing god. The sacred complex that was Butrint rising on its terraces just up the slope behind these seats. The theater was built into that holy ground as one piece of it. So to understand why a town this size would carve a thing this grand out of solid rock, you have to understand two things at once. What theater meant to the Greeks, and that here it was inseparable from the god. Theater itself. The Greeks more or less invented it. The whole idea of an audience gathered to watch a story performed. It grew out of religious festival, out of songs and dances honoring the god Dionysus. And somewhere in that ritual, someone stepped out of the chorus and became a character, started speaking as someone else, and theater was born. By the great age of Athens, it had become the form we still half live inside. Tragedy, where heroes are broken by fate and their own flaws, by Aeschylus and Sophocles and Euripides, and comedy, sharp and obscene and political, mocking the powerful to their faces. To watch a play was a civic act. The whole city came. You sat with your neighbors and watched human beings wrestle with the gods, with justice, with grief, with what it means to live and die well, and you went home changed. That was the point. And the Hellenic world carried this everywhere it went. Wherever Greeks built a city, they built a theater, because a city without one wasn't fully a city. So here, on this far shore of Epirus, looking across the water toward Greece itself, of course Butrint had one. It was a statement. We belong to that world. So what would you have seen on this stage? We don't have Butrint's playbill. No list survived. But we can say what filled a theater like this one. In the Greek centuries, the tragedies and comedies of the masters, traveling companies of actors moving from city to city, masked, their voices trained to carry, the chorus moving together in the round space below, and remember where you are. Inside the god's own precinct, the sanctuary climbing the terraces behind you. So the performances here were bound up with Asclepius, with festival, with pilgrimage. People came to this hill to be healed, and the drama was part of the offering. Then Rome arrived, made Butrint a colony, and rebuilt this place bigger and grander as the centerpiece of their city. And Roman taste ran differently. Less of the old tragedy, more spectacle. Mime, pantomime, broad comedy, music, recitation. From the rubble of that Roman stage, archaeologists pulled statues of the Emperor Augustus, of his wife Livia, of generals. They stood watching over the crowd. So picture it at its height. The marble facade behind the stage, the emperor's image gazing down, the seats packed and carved right into the front rows, the names of the city's leading citizens, their reserved seats, their names in the stone, the ancient version of a brass plaque on the chair. But here's what makes this theater unlike almost any other you'll stand in. Look at the entrance passage, and along that walkway, dividing the seats, inscriptions carved in Greek into the living stone. And they're not lines of poetry, they're legal records, records of freedom, because this theater wasn't only a stage, it was the place where slaves were set free. When someone in Butrint was granted their liberty, the act was performed here publicly in the name of Asclepius himself, with the god's own priest standing as witness and guarantor. And then it was carved into the theater so that it could never be taken back. So, among all the performances this space ever held, the most powerful may not have been a play at all. It was a real human being walking into this bowl of stone owned by another person, and walking back out free, in front of the whole assembled city, with their freedom written into the wall behind them. And there's a detail in those inscriptions that stops you. In Butrint, the women held real power in these acts. They could grant that freedom themselves and inherit property in their own right, at a time when most of the classical world gave them almost nothing. The stones record it. So that's what you're looking at. Not just a beautiful ruin, a machine for the things a city does together, to grieve, to laugh, to honor its gods, and to set its people free. The masks are gone, the voices are gone, but the shape that held them is right here, exactly where they left it.
So guys, this is the other side of the amphitheater. We've left 400 BCE and are now walking in the remains of what was an Hellenic Agora. And in the 1st century BCE, Butrint became a Roman colony under Julius Caesar. So what was an agora at one point with shops became the Roman Forum. And in the Roman Forum there would have been shopping, political discussions, temples. It's just so cool to see history like this. We're literally walking in the steps of our ancestors, learning how they lived, appreciating where they lived, contextualizing in a way that you can't get from books or movies, although they certainly help explain. Nothing beats actually being in a place. But of course, you can't really appreciate it as much without knowing the facts, the history. So reading, watching period movies certainly helps. I wanted to show you guys, there was a snake here. The security guard killed it, it looks like, but it's still moving. Isn't that freaky? I've never seen a dead snake before still move. Probably poisonous. So yeah, all of this was once a Hellenic Agora here in this part of Albania. The cultures, Albanian cultures, the Illyrians, had very similar cultures to the ancient Greeks. So it's kind of hard to tell where one culture starts and another one ends. I just like places like Troy. It's hard to actually tell. They were all under the same culture. Alrighty guys, we're gonna walk and see what else Butrint has to offer. And here is the amphitheater for reference, back in 400 BCE. As we have went from the 1st century BCE to 400 CE here at Butrint National Park. So this looks like there was a coast here. Oh, that's what my friend was talking about. I'm here with my friend Uku from Canada, and we got separated when I was looking at the snake earlier in the Roman Forum. So over there in front of you is a later insulae when the Romans took over this area after they conquered it. The Illyrians, the Hellenic peoples, and the Romans started building full streets and the urban planning, infrastructure, grid layouts that Rome was known for. So the city expanded greatly after the Roman colonization, which was roughly, 300 years after this city was established. So what we're looking at now are some original Roman dwellings, and then the dwellings including a palace that was built after it in the centuries that followed. So far we know of at least 600 years of habitation here on this site. Just amazes me. Most of this hasn't even been excavated yet. There's a good portion of pretty much everything that you see in front of us has some ruins buried underneath, 2 or 3 feet at most.
Only about 15% of the entire city has been excavated so far.
As time goes on, if you know anything about history and archaeology, the sediment layer and dirt, dust, organic matter takes thousands of years to build, build up. So most of this is not very far under us currently.
When we say a city is lost, we picture it falling down. But that's not really how it goes. Cities don't fall so much as they sink, slowly, quietly, under the weight of time itself. Think about what's always happening. Wind carries dust, rivers carry silt and drop it when they slow, leaves fall and rot. A wall crumbles and the rubble spreads across the floor. A roof collapses inward and seals what's beneath it. Every flood leaves a thin skin of mud. Every year leaves a little more than it takes away. And none of it gets cleaned up, because the people who would have swept it away are gone. So the ground rises, not fast, a few centimeters a century, sometimes less. But time is patient, and a few centimeters a century, given 1,000 years, given 2,000, becomes meters. The floor you walked on becomes the ceiling of what's buried. The street becomes the foundation. A standing column becomes a stub in the dirt, and then nothing at all, until the only thing left above the surface is a gentle swelling in a field that a farmer curses every spring. And here, at Butrint, there was a faster, hungrier kind of burial. The water, the marsh crept in, the channel silted up, and the whole lower city went under wet earth. And wet earth doesn't just cover, it preserves. It seals out the air. It keeps the wood, the bone, the mosaic, the carved name. The same flooding that drove the living away protected everything they left behind. That's the strange mercy of it. Every layer that buried this place was also a layer that saved it. The dirt isn't the enemy of the past. The dirt is the archive. Dig down through it carefully and you're not digging through ruin. You're reading pages, youngest at the top, oldest at the bottom, each one laid down by nothing more dramatic than time doing what time does. So when an archaeologist kneels in the soil here and brushes it away grain by grain, that's what they're undoing. 20 centuries of dust settling. They're lifting the lid that the centuries quietly closed.
Guys, after the Western Roman Empire fell, the city of Butrint decided for their own safety to build a wall around their city. So that's what we're looking at now. This would have been one of the entranceways, presumably by ship. Isn't this beautiful country?
Butrint was a major port from the 4th century BCE to the late 18th century CE. By that time, the marshlands began silting up, and the location dwindled to a small fishing village before being completely deserted.
Imagine living here. Thinking about your daily business. You might have been a miller or a baker, or worked washing clothes at a facility that had tons of urine. That's how they used to wash clothes. After your shift, you would go to the Roman Forum. If you didn't have your own farm lot or garden, you would have went and bought your daily bread, your olives, your wine. Of course, these were the days before coffee, so you'd have prepared a simple meal, probably, and would have enjoyed it with your family for a couple of hours. Maybe you would have taken a brief siesta before that. Not much different than our lives today, except I bet they probably appreciated it more. So this was a port. Third century BC to the 14th century AD.
We're now looking at the remains of the great Basilica of Butrint. By the time these stones were laid, Christianity had been the official religion of the Roman state for generations. The great ecumenical councils had already hammered out the creed, and Butrint was a functioning bishopric, an episcopal center that emerged in the 5th century. This was the architecture of a confident, imperial, fully institutional church under Byzantine rule. Western Rome fell in 476 CE, when the last Western emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed. But that was the fall of the western half only. The eastern half, ruled from Constantinople, what we now call the Byzantine Empire, didn't fall. It carried on, and Butrint was part of that surviving eastern world with the rest of the Balkans.
And that would have been the altar, I presume.
The churches of the period looked similar, and were still part of one church. The Great Schism of 1054 is still 500 years off, when the Orthodox East and the Catholic West went their separate ways and developed their own styles and differences.
You can see what's left of a Roman arch. Doesn't look like there's any iconography left, which would have adorned these walls, which would have been painted. Likely, at least. I just put some more SPF on. Back of my neck was burning a little bit. I haven't seen a person for about 20 minutes now. It's one of the beautiful things about going to sites like this. You really do, not that I'm doing any digging or excavating or picking anything up. This, unlike Pagoda Castle, is an active UNESCO heritage site and an archaeological excavation. So you never pick something up from a place like this. If you find something, find a guard or a curator and let them know exactly what it was that you found it. But it really just makes you feel like an explorer. It really gives you a sense that you're rediscovering history. You really do feel like an archaeologist being in a site like this. Oh, found a person. And that could be one of the best gifts of all. You not only see a site, you become a part of its history, and it becomes part of yours. So guys, this is what Butrint would have looked like, and where we've walked thus far. So this was a promontory surrounded by water. And the circuit walls here created beginning back in the 4th century BC. So this was before Rome had even conquered it. So I presume this waterway goes into the Ionian Sea. Butrint Archaeological Park is in the middle of nature and a part of it, decaying on its own time with flora and fauna. You've already seen the snake, huge bees, several butterflies. So if you're interested in nature, this is also a great place to come and appreciate both. So we're heading towards Lions Gate. And again, most of this has not been excavated yet. since it wasn't buried like Pompeii, a lot of it was left to ruin. And you ended up getting dirt and sediment and organic matter growing over things, things falling apart, fires, you know, everything that time will do to a location. The fact that this exists at all is quite remarkable and a blessing. Just being able to walk somewhere that people did literally hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
For reference, the park itself here is much larger than the park at Pompeii, but the city of Pompeii itself is much larger.
It's humbling. I guess that's the best word to describe it. These were our ancestors. We're all the same race, same species. Their brains were no more or less developed than ours. They have the same emotions, the same wants, the same needs, the same desires, the same fears, the same type of love. There's so much we can learn about ourselves, each other, by walking back in the steps of our ancestors like this. I presume this is the Lion's Gate. To me it looks more like a boar. Let's look, shall we? Yeah, it's a lion. Oh, so the lion is eating a bull. Okay. So time just kind of destroyed the lion's head. Let's get a closer look. I guess you can kind of make the lion's head out here, and the bull here. So I'm not sure if this is all built up or if people actually walk through this. Let's go through the Lion's Gate. So if you're coming from the port, this would be one of the first things you would have seen. I'm not sure if this was some kind of well or fountain.
The relief, a lion devouring the head of a bull, symbolizes the strength and power of the city over its enemies. Lion kills bull is one of the oldest power symbols in the Mediterranean world. It's meant to say, enter here and know what you're walking into. But here's the twist that makes it interesting. The lion relief was not part of the original wall. It was placed here in the 5th century CE to reduce the size of the gate and make it easier to defend. The relief itself is far older. It's from a temple building and may date as early as the 6th century BCE, possibly from a temple to Athena. So the Byzantines, facing threats and needing to narrow this entrance for defense, grabbed a 1,000-year-old carved stone from a ruined pagan temple and repurposed it as a lintel. A piece of archaic Greek sacred architecture became a medieval fortification element. That's Butrint in a single object. Civilizations cannibalizing the ones that came before. The gate was originally one of the access points to the Acropolis from the northern bay during the Classical and Hellenistic period. What you see now is the result of a medieval reconstruction, when the original gateway was reduced by positioning a monolith on the south side and a second block used as a lintel, creating a narrower, more defensible passage. And one more detail worth having on camera. Just past the gate is a spring which during Roman times was associated with the cult of nymphs. An inscription records that a citizen named Junia Rufina paid for its refurbishment in the 2nd century CE. The inscription reads, in Greek, Junia Rufina, friend of nymphs. So within a few steps, you pass through a pagan temple fragment repurposed by Christians and arrive at a nymph shrine funded by a Roman woman. 3 religions in 10 meters.
Okay, so that's where the landscape was. I don't know what this was. It was a house, or looks kind of big for a house, or a palace, or...
That's part of the fun of places like this. The discovery, the in situ, trying to figure out what you're looking at, like some archaeologists based on what you can see at the moment and the context.
Already, a lot more, I believe, of Butrint to explore. Well, they say 10,000 years from now, assuming we haven't killed each other off by then, or ourselves, people will say this was a historic site visited by people who cared about history. Like me, like you, for coming and joining me today. I really do appreciate you walking with me, experiencing what my life is through my lens. I hope it brings you some joy, some inspiration, some comfort. That's the purpose of this channel. One of them, at least. Another snake. I saw one earlier, one of the guards killed it, but the back of its body was still moving.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really weird.
Oh, they were just like cut off his head and...
He didn't have anything to cut it off with, it looked like, but yeah, he just kept poking it with a stick until finally. I was wondering what you guys were looking at.
This one's still alive.
This one's still alive, yeah. Take care, guys. Have a good day. So like I said, there's a lot of flora and fauna, as this one scene attests. It's a big snake. You gotta be careful, guys. These snakes are poisonous and venomous, from what I understand. Oh, look at the butterflies. And the big bee. The biggest bee I think I've ever seen in my life. Wow. You just have to appreciate this. Well, at least I do. Alrighty, let's explore some more. There's more to be had. Not sure how much more there is. Hey guys, so I am outside of the museum here at Butrint. Isn't this beautiful? Learned a lot more about this area. So this waterway, this whole area is basically a peninsula, and as you can see there is the Ionian Sea and Corfu, which about 17,000 years ago was actually connected to the mainland. The people here were different than the Illyrians, and they believe that some of the people of Troy, after Greece went and destroyed it, came here. At one point in time, Queen Tuta went and attacked, but took the land, but spared the city. And then you had Caesar and Augustus. Cicero, my favorite, wrote about Butrint. The history is just amazing. Again, this was a major center for hundreds of years because of a natural spring close by. It was deemed to have healing properties, and Theseus, if I'm saying the god's name right, had a temple built here in his honor. In the museum was an amphora, a clay vessel that they would hold things like olive oils, wines, and other liquids. There's actually in one was a baby skeleton from the 6th century. It's buried in the palace. The museum is quite moving. The significance of this place had always been known. It was never forgot to antiquity or lost to time like Pompeii was. Lord Byron was here back in the 18th century, and several celebrity archaeologists, thinkers, historians, personalities have been coming here since. It's been pretty much inhabited for centuries, the entire time. By the modern era, it was just a very small fishing village. But at one point in time, the Venetians took it over, bought it from, I don't remember who they bought it from, the Ottomans, and it was considered a food source and protection for Corfu right there. I mean, how many parts of the world have this kind of lineage, documented history? I'm simply moved. I don't know how much more of the park is left. I'm going to continue to explore. But I think that's going to be the end of this video, guys. Not sure if that's a hawk or eagle or... just completely stunning. I'm just... I would hate to live in a world where I couldn't experience awe and gratitude and thankfulness and humility and just to be moved. I hope you can appreciate those things, guys. I hope you feel them too. Thank you for joining me on this tour of Butrint. I'll include more of the history and voiceover works later. Take care, guys. Take care.